Well, let's call the meeting order. Thank you, Denise. Calling the meeting to order due to the governor's statewide disaster declaration relating to the COVID-19 pandemic and current public health guidance for social distancing. I've determined, hopefully for the last time, that it is not prudent for the members of the Economic Development Commission or staff to convene in person for this morning's meeting. Therefore, the members of the EDC are attending this meeting by video conference. Those same conditions require barring access to the public for in-person attendance. In light of those limitations, the public is invited to attend and listen to the meeting through Zoom platform or by phone, as indicated on the meeting agenda. To comply with the Open Meetings Act requirements for virtual meetings, this morning's meeting is being recorded. And good morning, everybody. So first item of business is, of course, a roll call.
Okay, Mike Elliott,
I'm here.
Mina Hall,
I'm here.
Erwin Steinberg,
Here.
Jay Levin, Roger.
Here.
Okay.
And yourself, of course.
And myself.
Okay. Hopefully the minutes from the last meeting got circulated. And they were, there was a lot in there, which I really liked. Just not so much as an editorial comment, but as a way to let people know what's going on and that there is significant going on. I thought that that was a nice clump of information to pass on to the village trustees and anybody else who bothered to look. Any corrections, additions? Mina had one spelling issue, I think it was, that was noted. Anything else?
I'll move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved. I had a discussion with one of the village attorneys about parliamentary procedure and municipal parliamentary procedure, and I'm told they're very different. To go through the vote aye business, I understand it is necessary sometimes. Meaning that we're doing, I prefer informality, and if I can move things along a little faster for all of us by just going, nobody's got a problem, do they? And hearing nothing, say, we're happy. We're done with that. Hopefully everybody else has no problem with that.
A quick question before we jump into the agenda. Do we know if there is any planned media event this morning? There was a Fox 32 News truck sitting in the apron of the Stemple lot right by the bridge. So I don't know if they're out here for any planned. If I don't think there's any events or anything going on.
Yeah, nobody's contacted Village Hall, so.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully it's some positive promotion for something, or maybe just a comfortable spot to stage something else they're doing. We'll all really, this is like when all the helicopters were going over our houses after the first big crash into the bridge. We are a media center in Long Grove suddenly. So anyway, it's approved. Items for discussion. Greg, do you have any things you want to share with us this morning?
Just a few things real quick. We're going to have another proposal presented to myself and staff tomorrow morning, second concept plan for that South 15 property. So I was contacted by the developer. So we'll be meeting tomorrow. There is a new business opening up in town. It's a bagel coffee shop. It'll be, I believe, at 225 Robert Parker Coffin. So it's right behind the realty place over by Joni's. Compass Realty, I met with them yesterday just to kind of walk in there and see how they were doing with their build out. That's going well. They're operating. They've become actively engaged with some of the events in the community, including the most recent Cocoa Crawl. And they're looking to sponsor some other events coming up. The storage place that we talked about at the last meeting at the corner of Lake Cook and 53 was approved by the village board to be referred to the planning commission. So they will be going before the planning commission with their designs and requirements they need in order to get that project underway. We had a pre-planning meeting with the owner of the Fred Astaire studio this week to talk about Brothers Field and how that is going to be converted or adapted into a small entertainment venue. Where the owners of that property are putting together some final presentation, which will go before the board either the end of March or the beginning of April. One last thing is in discussions with President Jacob and Trustee O'Reilly, we are putting together a concept for a business-wide meeting on how to adapt to coming out of COVID. As we went into COVID, it was a flick of a switch and businesses had to quickly adapt to how they would deliver goods and services to their customer base. There was a lot of latitude provided to these businesses, such as outside dining, those plastic bubbles, little trailers, outside service, where outside service would not normally be permitted. So we are looking at all those elements and seeing what should be retained and maybe enhanced and codified to things that were just for the moment and should be set aside. We'll be addressing some of the signage issues and bringing them back into code where appropriate. So we're putting that together now. We're going to do some outreach to the businesses and identify a venue and just kind of do a open Q&A and kind of talk about timing. We want to ease the businesses into the transition back out of the pandemic to minimize the impact of past codes on them. So we want them to continue, as President Jacob said, we want them to continue to flourish and succeed and don't want to interfere with their entrepreneurial spirit. And they've been very successful, again, going into the pandemic. We just need to make sure that we don't lose that momentum coming out.
What, do you have a date on that yet or not?
No, we're still putting that together. We've got a number of meetings coming up. We've got a public meeting regarding traffic calming that's coming up on March 22nd. So small staff, a lot of things going on, Erwin. So we're just trying to get a date. As soon as we get it, I'll make sure the EDC has it and we'll get it out to everybody.
Okay, great. Because I would like to go to that. I think it would be good if we had someone from the EDC attending that and trying to promote and help wherever we can. That's our our mission.
Yeah, I'll make sure the communication gets out. And the last thing is that March 19th village workshop that had been postponed over some months is firm. We're set to go. So that'll be on this March 19th. That's all I got, Roger.
Okay, that's a ton. Thank you. Any questions, anybody, as long as we're here for a moment?
Just a comment. I think as we get new businesses in, it would be great if we'd like to get some more members for this committee. You know, at times we have turnover. So I think if they're Long Grove residents, it's something we should talk to them about.
Yeah, the President Jacob had asked us to go back and look at our commission and committee membership to see where we were potentially short people, so we could begin to look at those appointments. So that's currently going on. I was at Softwave yesterday. I figured they've been open for a little bit. They just got a sign approved through the Architectural Commission. And I figured I'd go spend a little money over there and bring home some fish. And I talked to Bob, the owner over there, at some length about getting engaged in the community. And he's motivated to do that. So
Great.
Great, that's great.
I have a quick question. Does anyone have an update on the the progress of, I think is it the reserve where they're redoing CF building? Is that built out, or are they having any luck attracting tenants?
I've had conversation with the property owner over there. There's been no activity that we're aware of. We know that they've had some issues with kids being on the property at night, but those issues seem to have been resolved. But in my conversation with the property owner, he's still looking to do some work on the property. The smallest space he's going to lease out is 7,000 square feet, and attracting tenants right now to that kind of square footage is a little bit of a challenge. Landmark is having the same difficulty, especially since more and more businesses are deciding that one thing the pandemic taught them is that they can work remotely. So filling office space seems to be a bit of a challenge.
That makes sense. Thanks for that update.
Yeah, I thought I saw a tenant sign on Route 22 at the entrance to the reserve, but who knows what it was for. Apparently not a tenant.
I have a question, Greg, about your comment on Brothers Field. What type of venue are they planning? Does it involve new construction, or is it still an outdoor space? I mean, what are they thinking about?
As they presented to the pre-planning group that was gathered, they're taking a concept of a mini Ravinia, and I mean mini, and they're working that out into phases where they're going to have an outside movie theater for families to come and watch movies in the evening. They'll be operating on the weekends and only on special events during, I believe, Monday through Thursday. They're going to have ancillary businesses for beverage service and food service. They will be building, when you talk about construction, Pam, they had talked about building a pavilion in the field, again, and a stage. They are going to eventually rehab in these phases the red building that was in front of that in Brothers Field. They're going to hope to put public bathrooms that would be accessible even when the building's closed, as well as a community kitchen that can be used for different events, where the kitchen could be rented or the kitchen would be used for their food service. So there is some construction. It is phased, and it is seasonal.
Oh, that's those sound like really great plans. One thing I can forward to you, Greg, is there was a grant. I was looking for any grants that could be available, and there was one that's being offered. I'm trying to find my information on that for towns that are looking for to advance their recreational facilities or tourism. And I'm wondering if something like that could be helpful for them, for Brothers Field.
Yeah, and I've asked Natalie, who's been a valuable asset and supporter of our EDC work, to begin to look at some funding opportunities, especially for small businesses. I have to tell you, I went back and looked at the dollars that were granted to businesses during the pandemic, and I don't have that at my fingertips, but there was a substantial amount of money that businesses received throughout Long Grove during that grant period, between the CARES Act, the federal back to business grants, and the PPP loans, which many of them were forgiven for payroll protection. So for us to take advantage of funding opportunities, I've always been an advocate wherever I've been that we should have our name in the hat to try to secure as much funding as possible. So.
Agreed. I'll send that information. Should I send that to Natalie, Greg?
You can send it to both of us, I think, Pam. That way I can, do some follow up on it as well.
Okay, sounds good.
This is doing some things that we've talked about before, especially the public bathroom. And my recollection is we tried to promote the idea of a public bathroom, and you were very enthusiastic when Jesse came and said, you know, I'd pay part of the cost of this. And it got, it didn't get much support from the village itself. The village was talking about the cost of maintaining patrols and off-hour attractive nuisance kind of business and all that kind of legitimate concerns about adding an additional service in the downtown area. Is there a place for us, either individually or as the EDC, to throw our support early on rather than wait until it's halfway through a committee?
I'm happy to share with you when it's going to have some a discussion of substance. I was asked earlier this year to look at opportunities for having 2 locations for public bathrooms. One identified over by the old Welcome Center, that little building where that little building is over by Enzio's. And another one near the Stemple lot, so it would service both sides and be adaptable, or be able to be adapted to existing sewer and water. So I've already done that, and I put together a staff memorandum with some information for the board members to review. I know we've had some initial discussions in the last 60 days with the business owners who are part of the HDLGBA. To talk exactly about those that were in the past discussed regarding ongoing maintenance and cleanliness of the bathrooms and service of the bathrooms. So right now, it's still in the data gathering stage, for a lack of a better description. But as we get closer to having more conversations of substance, I would certainly ask let the EDC know and let you know how's the best way to participate with that. There hasn't been any pushback in my conversations with the board members. It was legitimate concerns. How do we manage them? How do we manage those facilities? And that how do we make sure the cost isn't just totally absorbed by the village, and we can share that with the people the businesses that'll be utilizing them more. So logistics right now.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is mention of the HODBA. They held an election, and Ryan Messner was reelected. I did reach out by phone and by email to Ryan saying, you know, if you got the time and you're interested, I'd love to have you drop by and talk to us about what your plans are. But I haven't heard anything back, and I don't see him on the screen anywhere. So I'm guessing that, you know, maybe he's over with, maybe he's with the TV tricks right now, doing something for the village. So the next time I've got on the agenda is somewhere we started talking about this PACE webinar on energy conservation. And I volunteered myself to sit through that. It was interesting. That's usual start for everything. What it boils down to is that Lake County has connected with a group that's national to facilitate the obtaining of loans by people in mid-sized businesses that are related to energy conservation. I thought from the initial promotions that it was a grant type thing or some such. I thought it might be interesting because I could think of a couple of places here where this might be useful. But at the end of the day, what it boiled down to was that if I got it right, for ongoing businesses, it can be difficult even if you own the land to obtain long-term financing for the business. And this program allows the borrowers to, as long as the improvements that they're planning on are related to energy conservation in some way, get these long-term loans. The agency provides the introductions and facilitates, if that's the right word, the obtaining of these loans. Apparently, the loans are not guaranteed by the village or any, local government or anything like that. But they are a source of financing. And the one that came to mind was and I can't remember the name, the large company on Gilmer Road that was looking for some help with sewage and getting tapped into the Lake County sewer system.
I think it was Matt Holdings.
Matt Holdings, yes. And for them, at least, this seemed like an ideal situation for them to at least look into. And can we make that connection? Or Greg, should we have somebody from the village make that connection, say this is out there? Or can we, I could give the name to the people at Pace to talk to.
Yeah, we can do that.
If nothing else, it says to them that we're keeping our ear to the ground, looking to help them on that project, and there may be others.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Roger. I forgot who it was at Lake County Partners that Matt Holdings actually reached out to them, and they called us. They called at that time. We were, I was interfacing with them, with Lake County Partners, and they were saying that Matt Holdings was looking for some additional infrastructure help in terms of, sewage and water and, that kind of thing. And, would be a good idea, Greg, to see if there might be some financing opportunities available for them.
Okay, I've got a note. We'll do some follow-up on it.
All right. Maybe we put something in LinkedIn about, because they were very aggressive in trying to market the program. And I suspect that some of it is that they have ties, informal partnership kind of things, with suppliers of energy conservation projects. And they, said it's not just putting up power cells, it's all kinds of things. They said it might be possible for card changing stations, so that if say the Forsyths wanted to enhance the value of their property and put in card changing stations, electrical charging stations, that they could find money to do that through this facility.
Okay.
And we've only got a handful of big landowners in the middle, and it wouldn't be too bad. It wouldn't take too much to at least pass along that information to them.
No, we can certainly do that.
Greg, the gentleman who reached out to us, he's talked to our group before, is Ron Lanz, Lanz, from Lake County Partners. He's the gentleman that Matt Holdings called to see if there was some way they could get help with additional infrastructure to be able to stay in their area off of 22.
And they're on 20. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, 22. I thought Gilmer. Thank you, Pam.
That's okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm sorry. I thought Matt Holdings was on Gilmer, not on 22. Is it on 20? Is it on 22?
Well, it is where it is. We'll find out, and we'll get the information to them.
Yeah, they did reach out to Ron Lanz, and he called us. I remember, when we were interfacing with them for the EDC, and he called me one day to say that Matt Holdings got a hold of him to see if there was anything that the village could help with in terms of their water and sewer availability. So that would be a good one, Greg, to, if they could connect with some of this, these financing opportunities, that would be great.
Yeah, we'd have to discuss what they're looking for. And Mina, yeah, it's Gilmer. We'd have to see what they're looking for exactly too, for a water standpoint, because of our infrastructure and sewer. But to get the ball rolling, we can certainly do that.
Thank
I
you.
think they are one of the largest international companies that's headquartered in Long Grove. They were on the Cranes list for something. I don't know if it was minority businesses. I've tried calling there 3 times when we had the EDC call around during the pandemic and never got a phone call back. But I think it would be good to develop a direct relationship with them and see how we can help, because they're buying companies from what I could read. And this is their corporate headquarters.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly would be worthwhile to make sure they stay in Long Grove, because I don't know the extent of what their conversation with Lake County partners, if they were looking for other sites, but they were, also very willing to, if there was anything available for them to stay where they were at, they were willing to do that. So I think it would be worthwhile.
They've got a pretty sizable facility. I'm looking at it from the, or a footprint. I'm looking at it from an aerial right now, and okay.
Yeah,
You
my
are-
impression was that they are exactly the kind of business enterprise that this PACE thing is looking to partner with, because they're talking about relatively sophisticated financing with multiple uses of the same property, with different finance lines and cross collateralization and all that good stuff. So it might be a nice fit for them, and if it did, that'd be a positive achievement, I think. So anyway, talking about the next item on the agenda is a report or a draft that was circulated about looking at Lake and its infrastructure needs. The report is not a quickie; it's long. And we've done this kind of thing before, where I figured, well, I could circulate it to everybody and ask everybody to read it before the meeting. We can discuss what it is or isn't in terms of Long Grove and its needs or desires. But my experience is that with those kind of things, people will at best maybe get a scan to it. So I asked Erwin if he could take a few minutes to dig into it and pull out what he perceives of as things that really ought to be considerations for Long Grove, because clearly it all wasn't. Some of it was stuff that we just don't need to focus on. And Erwin has, right?
I have it right here. So,
Right.
yeah.
So share on with us.
I thought the report was excellent. And they really, good. They went through a SWOT analysis. So what I did was I picked out about 8 or 10 key items that I think could pertain to Long Grove, and we can do some sort of follow-up. They would like to develop partnerships in the region. And I think we would also. We're trying to develop a relationship with them. Like Pam said, we had Ron Lance on, and I think he was very helpful. So that's right in the draft. And they're looking to increase businesses in Lake County. The clusters they're looking at is life sciences, because they already have a significant employment base with, whether it's Abbott, AbbVie, and some others. And then they also have the innovation lab on Milwaukee. I don't know if it's Milwaukee, but it's in Libertyville. And they're looking for high tech. So light on the manufacturing, but heavy on life sciences and high tech. And they want to bring as many jobs as they can to Lake County, which is pretty standard. On the housing side, their strategy is to increase the number of housing units across affordability and density. And boy, if we haven't discussed that at our meetings a bunch of times, their definition of affordable may be different than ours, but increase the number of housing units is important. So that was a real highlight. They want to leverage the infrastructure broadband. And I know we've discussed that also, and that may be something that, as an example, I'm not sure with the CF property where they are on the broadband, but that was one thing that was in here. And they want to develop an educational program for workforce development, which would enable them to bring more workers to the Lake County area. They're also looking to develop clusters of businesses around public transportation. which we don't have here, but maybe that's something in the future we could address. The quality of life, there was a whole, it was almost like they were writing this for Long Grove. It was a section on quality of life investments. Increase public access to natural resources and green spaces. If that's not Long Grove, I don't know who it is. Expand the trails, develop resident visitor centers. They wanted it near commuter routes, but that's not critical for us. And promote development efforts around that, open spaces and green spaces. Some of the threats that they came up with in their SWOT analysis was, rising housing costs, how to get affordable housing, lack of interest in manufacturing companies. So they were really, it appeared, looking more for the tech, the life sciences, the R&D companies, and that to develop childcare facilities and education for childcare as they brought workers into this area. So those were the key areas, and I really focused in on where we have our strong areas, with the trails, with the open spaces. I think we should discuss, how we can work with them and really say, hey, Long Grove's got this. What was your thinking on this? And how could we partake in this and help bring jobs and housing here and utilize our open spaces? So those were the key issues, but I'll tell you, they did a very good job. If you have a chance, just go through the threats and opportunities. There are 2 pages. There's some charts there. I thought it was very good. So that's my report on some of the real important parts of that.
Thank you, obviously, but I had the same reaction to it because I kind of blew through all the opening to get to the SWOT analysis. And a good part of it really doesn't relate to Long Grove, at least as it is and probably will be for the next decade or so. But some of it does speak to Long Grove. The fact that we do have this strength with our emphasis on the natural environment and the paths and all those kind of things. And maybe the village is missing a beat by worrying about more stores or less nursing homes or whatever, and would be more likely to attract developers in the spaces we have that are open by re-emphasizing our natural connections, getting back to Rita and the pathways and all that. Has anybody else got any thoughts about that aspect of it?
The environmental aspect is one of our strongest assets. I mean, when we compare ourselves to other communities, what we do with conservancy, what we do with connectivity, I can tell you that this board, we did the Robert Parker Coffin pathway. And again, I think I mentioned in the last meeting that the objective is to have a link all the way from the Des Plaines River bike trails to downtown Long Grove, and we're working towards that. We're now, I just had meetings with the village of Buffalo Grove to discuss a partnership for connectivity of the subdivisions, like the crossings, so we can get them access to the Long Grove side and bring them into downtown. So, I mean, between bikes and pedestrian walkways and pathways, I mean, those are great quality of life and very attractive. When I met with Compass yesterday, one of the things they stressed to me was the beauty of the downtown and the environmental aspects of the community. They were longing to get into the village. They exactly how they described it, and so that attracted them. So, you SWOT analysis, Erwin. Yep, that's one of our strengths, and we should be capitalizing on that without a doubt.
I'm going to try to tie 2 items together. One was the education and childcare, and the other was, our environmental and natural resources. And maybe we try to promote some educational programs from the grammar schools or high schools in the area and which would include, a little history of Long Grove, the environmental, and maybe there could even be a situation where they have a box lunch or something in our courtyard areas, and that may bring the kids and teachers and some adults supervising them. That may be something for the downtown merchants, but I'm trying to tie things together and to get as much activity here. Maybe twice a year we do something like that, or a field trip. Years ago.
Yeah, Ann Kritzmeyer and Jenny had both of those trustees had put together that marketing program with Stevenson High School, and they asked me to speak at that program, and it was, I think, in November, if I remember correctly, and it was well received. I mean, the students ended up coming back to Long Grove. Some of those students had not been in Long Grove, but they were working with businesses to put some kind of marketing strategy together and further educate themselves about Long Grove. To your point, Erwin, what people know and don't know about Long Grove, the contrast, they think of the downtown, but don't think about how big the village is and how beautiful it is and the environmental aspects of it. So I have a call with Trustee Kritzmeyer, and she's been the leader on that project for the last couple of years, and I will share that with her. And I know they were doing it once a year, but maybe twice a year is an option. But I'll make sure I communicate that with her and specifically discuss about our strengths on the environmental side.
I can chime in on that because I've been part of that marketing committee with Jenny and Dan, and I think we would love to do it twice a year. However, there aren't enough businesses wanting to participate. We keep having to really go through and trying to get more businesses to participate in this, and we've had a hard time, which is I think why we're limited to once a year. So if we can get more business participation, because we want these kids to have the experience with actual businesses, then I think we can do it more because they offer this class all, both semesters. So
Right.
I don't think they do it anymore, but for years there were always buses, school buses in the village hall parking lot during the day for kids who were coming for a recreation of a frontier schoolhouse in the schoolhouse right next to the school. And that told kids from all over Buffalo Grove and everywhere, oh yeah, this is that little village with the stream and the blah, blah, blah. So they did know. And maybe it's something like that could be recreated. But my thought is not to lose this. Maybe we're losing a little bit in terms of our focus on it's a business friendly place. We looked at focusing on how easy it is to get a permit relatively here and how business friendly we are. And those aren't things that are not to be addressed. They're important. But if we have a strength, a lifestyle, an open area, a blah, blah, blah area, we should be pushing that as well. So I apologize. I jumped over the LinkedIn business and we should go back and do that. But can we get some kind of a thread in the LinkedIn that's like a subtopic about Long Grove, natural Long Grove, open Long Grove, lifestyle space, to push that as part of our business push, to consciously make that a part of what we're doing.
So you would be suggesting some kind of strength to what Erwin was talking about, profile.
Something in LinkedIn Long Grove that says to everybody that's out there, remember, Long Grove is a wonderful place to live in. When you drive home to Long Grove and you take that long curving drive down Old McHenry Road, your tensions will disappear. And spring, summer, fall, look at beautiful Long Grove. The daffodils are coming out. The colors are coming out. And the fact is that I think that is a tremendous. I read an article once about recreational values in the city of Chicago. And one of the bigger recreational values that they pointed out was Lakeshore Drive. And they argued that Lakeshore Drive and the chance to drive that way to work and back and see the lake and all that was a big asset for the city. I suspect most people would agree. So we've got some really beautiful drives, even 8345 going north, cuts through all these beautiful natural areas. The big swath of open prairie recreation at 22 and 83 are assets that we could be promoting. And I don't think we'd get any kind of pushback from anybody on that if we made that part of our goal. So I like the analysis because of the SWOTs. And the SWOTs got me thinking about various things. Be quiet for a minute, see if anybody else has any thoughts.
Yeah, let me just add in, Pam, maybe you should go around, Lance, and tell them we spent some time going through the report. And one of the things that grabbed our attention was this, environmental open spaces, and how could we work with Lake County partners to help promote it? Obviously, if they put it in there, there must be some reason, and maybe there's some things that would benefit us mutually in that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And another thought would be, you were talking about the historic aspects of Long Grove. We can also get some tie-in with that Long Grove Historical Society. They periodically, have some very interesting articles about the history of Long Grove. And maybe we could tie some of that in with the LinkedIn posts. I know last year they had an article about the origins of the tulip plantings in the spring in Long Grove. And there's a like a sister city in France that had similar types of tulip plantings in the spring. And Long Grove actually is a sister city with this city. It's kind of on the border of France and Germany. I can pull up that article, and that's something we can repost because it's very interesting how they still communicate with Long Grove, and they, this town in France, always, gives their local population some idea of what's going on in Long Grove, and we've tried to do that on this by the same token. I mean, that could make kind of an interesting article coming into the spring.
It might not hurt to maybe not refocus, but add an additional focus to what we're doing. I concern myself with people thinking that we're just nothing except trying to push in mid-rise housing for the village because we think this or that and that.
Right. Roger, you mentioned that there were buses that would come to the Frontier Schoolhouse. And, the Historical Society has talked about that. There are people there that still give tours. They don't have as much activity as they once did, but they are there and available. So it's something we might even have somebody from the Historical Society talk with us at some point, because they would be happy to revive those tours.
I would offer this, that Trustee O'Reilly was a docent. She was actively involved with that, and she talks about every aspect of that, from the taking the young people into Village Hall to say this is where your government worked and or works, and then talked about the Root Farm and then the Archer School. I think she would be a significant resource in reviving, if it's able to be revived, this initiative, because she is a staunch and strong proponent for it.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Well, if we say that the high school students at Stevenson don't even know that Long Grove exists, and this is a strength potentially for growing our business, the equation adds up. We ought to see if we can't get this going. Let's see what we can do.
I'm happy to have that conversation with Trustee O'Reilly, and mention to her what was discussed here, and pick her brain on what she thinks our next approach should be.
I have
If I could have one comment to this.
Yeah.
If I could have one comment to this discussion, I think these are all cool ideas, right? If we want to publish an article about a sister city in France in the spring, it's timely, and talk about tulip, but we have to have the content be through the lens of why would a business want to come to Long Grove, right? And I think to Roger's
Yeah.
earlier point, hey, if you locate your business here, you're in a beautiful environment. And so we have to always be mindful of what's in a business owner's head or someone who's thinking of opening a business. Why would they come to Long Grove? And there are a lot of reasons. So as long as we keep that focus, I think anything that we post should be in the vein of, hey, here's yet another reason why Long Grove's a great place to bring your business.
That's a good point, Mike. Thank you. That we need to make sure we have that orientation.
Hey, Pam, I'll throw, go ahead, finish up.
No, when you were talking about, when you were talking about this, what I thought of automatically, and Nina's probably familiar with it, you hear those advertisements for Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates, and is it Bridgeview, on why to turn around and relocate business there because of TIF incentives, because of access to roads, access to water and infrastructure. It's the same thing. It's just our offerings are different, and we can use that as a model to adapt a message out there. I think that's what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So here's my thought. We're firing before we aim on this. We always do this. Why don't we ask maybe Ron Lance, a couple of his people, to join us? Maybe it's not on a Zoom, maybe when we're in person, and go through how we could work together, since it's part of their strategic plan and what they want to accomplish, and how they can help us in Long Grove. Let us explain what we have here and talk about, some of the things we discussed here. And maybe they have some ideas. Maybe they could say Lake County Partners promotes Long Grove because of the natural resources and blah, blah, blah. And then we could determine how we get high school students involved, junior colleges involved, whatever it may be. I just think
Details
we have
later.
a gorilla behind us to help us. They've spent a lot of time and money on this. Let's see what's in their head, and let's promote Long Grove. In their SWOT analysis, they could put Long Grove right next to it.
I just sent about 3 minutes ago, literally 3 minutes. I'm looking at it now. I just sent an email to Ron.
Oh, great.
Asking him to get together and talk about Matt Holdings. So when I have that conversation on that, I'll have that added piece to the conversation.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we should start there before we jump into anything, because if they've got a lot of power, and if they buy into it, which it's already in the plan, let's see what they have to say.
I'm gonna jump in for a quick second.
Yeah.
So the quality of life issue, again, I deal with this every day. We don't really look at that unless we're looking at corporate headquarters. And we won't look at corporate headquarters unless we have population size and density and amenities. And I think we've got a lot of that, but we don't have. It's a hard draw trying to even limit down to Lake County, because if you think of site selection as a funnel, we start with the whole world and we narrow it down based on whatever is important to each of these companies and these projects. And I think right now, quality of life is like my 27th thing on the list. Unless it's corporate headquarters, then it might jump up to like the top 10. So I love that we think I do believe that these are one of our strengths, like the quality of life, the environment, and per the SWOT analysis. But I do think that, we kind of have to limit our expectations, because unfortunately, I'm sure Lake County Partners is more focusing on manufacturing operations coming in. And if you look at a lot of their announcements recently, that's what it's been about. And this workforce training is typically geared towards manufacturing, because we're still missing CNC machine operators and welders in this country. And we are not any of, and then, yes, we have a bonus that we have a lot of pharmaceutical and healthcare related medical device companies in our region. I've worked with several of them. But I'd say that, we are more of a focus for the residents more than the businesses at this point in time, unless we can grow our numbers, or unless we can do, I don't know. I'm just saying it. I've always said from the get-go that it's challenging to put Long Grove on a map because of our, we're a town of 8,000. I think it helps us when we start saying 45-minute drive time, we have X number of people, 30-minute drive time, we have X number of population. That is what draws, which is why like Vernon Hills is getting so much traction, which is why, you know, some of these like Lake Zurich, because they're larger communities, we just fall, we're like a tiny little, you know, we're like the little bits of sand that fill in. And that's why I doubt they're going to really focus on us. I think it's great that we're working with Ron, but unfortunately, you know, they're kind of focused more on the bigger communities, the Gurney's. And again, Greg, you've experienced this working with another smaller community, but we're even smaller than Highland Park. We're even smaller than, you know, Highwood. We're small, you know, so I think, you know, I just want to temper our expectations. I think it's wonderful that we're outreaching with Ron, but I do think that we need to temper our
Well,
expectations.
I think, you know, according, you know, in response to what you're saying, I mean, I don't disagree, but I think when he says that we should look at how to help a specific business here, we should, you know, I mean,
Absolutely.
he doesn't seem like a gentleman that wants to waste his time. And I mean, if he's giving us one issue to handle with this Matt Holdings, I think we should jump on it. It's not that he's going to recommend Long Grove for some large, you know, I don't know, medical pharmaceutical company, but, you know, if we can help save that business for Long Grove, that's worth quite a
Oh,
bit.
Pam, I 100% agree. I don't disagree with if he's specifically a Long Grove company, we should absolutely be on top of that, because I mean, shame on us if we don't reach out to any of our business retention kind of companies. So BRE is a big component of all economic development groups. So absolutely, I'm just thinking from a future brand new site selection, it's a little bit tougher and it puts Lake County. I know we're on their website and I know that but it's a harder, when you've got, you know, tens of thousands of communities out there, it's hard to really narrow down to a Long Grove. And usually the regional partners do help, like Lake County partners, in order to funnel to some of the smaller communities, but it's got to be the perfect fit. But I agree, as long as we're on their radar and as long as Greg starts to maintain a relationship with him, I think, you know, that's the best we can do at this point.
I agree.
I took this report to be really focused at reaching village governments because they're about to get the possibility of some infrastructure money from the infrastructure bill, and focusing on where those dollars could have the biggest impact on the Lake County region, looking at the big picture. I thought that the report was most instructive as an educational tool for us to remind us about what the relatively few strengths were that Long Grove as a village has, and the significant weaknesses like the lack of developable space. You know, one of the things that surprised me was that from this report's point of view, there was a relative lack of developable space, especially for commercial manufacturing and you know, large business operations. And that remains a problem for us, right?
But you know what though, Roger, that's across the country. It's not just a Lake County specific issue. It is an across the country issue of lack of space, lack of available buildings already developed and built out. And so, I mean, I'm working on projects in Texas and Mississippi right now, and within like 5-hour drive of the Dallas area, there's only one available building with a real spur access, you know, so it is kind of a crazy thing right now. It's not limited to us, but it's something that, you know, I think they need to focus on, but which typically leads to more spec development, that everyone gets a little, you know, sketchy with the economy and they just don't want to spend that kind of money. But no, I agree. But I think we specifically in Long Grove, if we could, you know, again, we have a lot of empty buildings or vacant spaces like in the downtown area that we can focus on, you know, let's do something with those. You know, we have the South 15 and I'm so glad to hear that Greg's had multiple meetings. I know one's with the CBRE guy, Brian, but and his client, but I'm glad to hear that because we do need that. And I'm glad that Greg, that you were able to maybe talk to your DOT person about getting access there directly from 53 and 83. I think those will really help sell. And for me, I know I've been a big pusher of trying to develop more of our TIF properties, that's where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck. And right now, I mean, I'm glad we're seeing some movement, but I mean, that's where I think we really should focus if that's something that the board wants us to do.
Yeah, and we're starting to see, to Mina's point, we're starting to see some activity at that Southgate TIF. So with one development with the storage facility, but we're also talking two other potential developments. They're recognizing that those are open spaces that we have an opportunity to turn around and develop. And you know, the South 15 certainly sits in the TIF, the downtown 83 TIF. So that's where the economic development and community development will have its largest impact on the village from a financial and standpoint, certainly. And we have to figure out how to and I think we're starting to do that because we're having good discussions and working meetings with the downtown association. But that vacancy rate, when you're sitting at a 47% vacancy rate, you know, 3.5 times more than the national norm in that downtown area, that's a concern.
Which is, I mean, that I think we've tried to hammer that home. Even, I mean, God, the last what 5-6 years that we've been doing this, we just can't seem to get that vacancy thing to go away. You know, we talked about maybe imposing fees or penalties for being vacancy, which other communities are doing and seeing some success. But I think we've just been, you know, against it or something. I'm not really quite sure, but I wonder if, you know, if the honey doesn't draw, maybe at that point it is vinegar that we use. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the limitations of being a non-home rule community allows us to do in that regard. Maybe nothing. I'd have to check.
My impression is that what has been filled in downtown is not traditional long growth kind of businesses, touristy businesses, selling gift kind of businesses. It seems like the setup isn't maybe right for the kind of potential tenants that are out there. Is that?
That's a subject that's been discussed over the past months. The B1 district, the historic district, has a zoning requirement for 80-20, 80% retail, 20% services. We are at that cap right now. There has been discussion by business owners as well as members of the board. Should we look at that and make a tweak to that number to see what we should be driving to the downtown to reduce that vacancy rate versus standing fast on those numbers? So yeah, so that's definitely on the radar, Roger.
As Mina said, we've been talking about this for a long time, the committee anyway, and we still have significant vacancies, and it's problematic.
Yeah, I know that is our that economic development is essential to our ability to deliver what we want to in local government. It's been, I think this is my 5th or 6th EDC meeting, so it's still, I'm trying to you know, adjust the way we support economic development here at Village Hall. So, but and I'm just sharing that with you so you know. But yeah, we're targeting this, and we're targeting it aggressively. I'm out, you know, yesterday I was out meeting with businesses just to make sure if they needed anything, that they knew we were here. We're talking this post-pandemic workshop potentially, and every time I get a chance to identifying a way to bring a new business in. We're going out and doing the property maintenance enforcement this month. We've got our pictures of every building downtown that needs to be brought up to a standard. We're looking at screening opportunities to make the downtown more attractive for potential occupants. So, and we're looking also at how do we market the new streetscape and the lighting that people may not even be familiar about in order to attract people into the downtown area. When you look at what the streetscape is now compared to what it was, and you all certainly know it. It's an unbelievable improvement. Stemple line, unbelievable improvement. Maintenance, the pathway from Robert Parker Coffin to 83. So the village board recognizes the need to make those investments, and it's been going well, and they've supported staff's efforts into working with the business community to reduce the vacancy rates. So I give you that long diatribe just to turn around and basically say, you know, we hear what the EDC's concerns are, what the EDC thinks could be of value, and many of those we're starting to move forward. Hopefully we'll see some nice progress.
Well, the lists of things that are going on, the applications and whatnot for this meeting and the one before has certainly been encouraging. And hopefully the coming out of the pandemic and getting back to whatever normal business is around here will be a change for us. I jumped over LinkedIn, and I did want, we ought to spend some time. How are we doing with LinkedIn? Anybody want to update us, Mike?
Well, I asked Natalie, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say that it is up and running. Natalie's done a great job of putting some initial content out there that I think is very relevant. I'd like to remind everyone on this committee, and Greg, if you can remind our board members too, that the more we all follow the Village of Long Grove LinkedIn page, the more we all comment on it and like all of the posts, the more it's going to get out into our own personal LinkedIn networks, which is what we need to get for exposure. So just remind everyone, follow the Long Grove LinkedIn, like all the posts, comment on them. And then you have the opportunity when you comment on a LinkedIn post, LinkedIn will say, hey, do you want to share this with your network as a post? So not only does it show up as a comment under the original post, but it goes out almost as an original content post on your LinkedIn page to a certain percentage of your network, right? So I think if we do more of that, it's just going to help improve the traffic. I also have an idea that I'd like to float, and I will need Nina's expertise and Greg yours as well. Now that we have that up and running, we still have to generate content, and I'd like to take I think it's time we get proactive, right? We've talked about having these tips and no one's aware. So LinkedIn on its own isn't going to be a way to promote the TIF. And I don't know the legalities of promoting a TIF. I know we don't want to promote it in a way that sets unrealistic expectations. And I think our previous conversations have talked about there's really nothing wrong with communicating that there is a TIF available. So my thought process is, I think we've got a lot of the groundwork done. I think, Nina, you may have put together a single sheet about the TIF that explains that it's available. I think we have an opportunity to do a TIF campaign, and that would involve reposting that information on the EDC microsite that already exists on the Long Grove webpage, posting that in a series of posts, perhaps on LinkedIn. And then Pam, I know you did a lot of work trying to research and get a list of brokers, right?
Right.
Developers. If you have email addresses for those folks, it would have to come from the village, but there's nothing wrong with sending out, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong here, if I'm overstepping something for marketing a TIF, you'll have to let me know. That is not my intention, but send out an email to the developers and brokers of the list we have with a link to the microsite. Also have a LinkedIn post or a series of posts to drive traffic to the microsite, and just let's have an awareness campaign for this thing, right? It's great, Greg, that you mentioned that there's developers interested in the TIF at Lake Cook and 53, but I think the more we make people aware of the opportunity, the more traffic we'll get. I'd be happy to develop a first draft of content for it, on top of anything that Nina's already put together. Again, I'm not a TIF expert, so I can put a more marketing slant on it.
Yeah,
That's just my idea.
I think that sounds like a great idea. I think we were waiting for approval on that TIF flyer that I made 4 months ago, 5 months ago. I think we were waiting for board approval before we could move on it. I just
Perfect.
haven't heard anything about whether or not that was even a thing, but I don't know, Greg, if maybe you can see, because it was very simple. There was nothing.
To be honest with you, Nina, I don't think I've seen it. And if I can get my hands on that, that'd be great. Two things I'd bring to the commission's attention is that the 17th is the joint review board and reappointments and the meeting of the JRD for the TIF districts on March 17th. The greatest holiday recognized short of Christmas, that would be St. Patrick's Day. I'll share my Irish in me. And then the 19th is the workshop. So I think the timing would be right to have that discussion with the board members as part of that. I know our trustee Kritzmeyer, who is the chair on finance, has been talking about the TIF and how do we turn around and get people interested in the TIF. So if I can get that information, I think the timing is right to have the discussion and to move whatever initiative everybody chooses forward.
I will send it to you, Greg.
Thank you, Mina. And then I'll follow up with both of you, Mike and Mina.
That's awesome. I just think even if we can get a campaign outline to you, Greg, to bring to that workshop to say, hey, here's what the EDC envisions. Here's the flyer that Mina developed. Here's the strategy. Here's the communication calendar for email, for LinkedIn, and here's how we're going to measure increased traffic to the EDC microsite that talks about the TIF. I think if we have a plan for you to present versus just a pie in the sky idea, it may get more traction.
Certainly. Yep.
Other than that, I couldn't be more pleased with the work that Natalie did on LinkedIn. I still owe her some ideas for content, and I think all of us, if we have ideas for content, send them to Natalie. You can't post too much, I don't think. I mean, we don't want to put meaningless stuff out there, but as long as we're posting with that idea of, hey, here's a reason why you should come to Long Grove with your business, I think it's relevant, right? So off to a great start. Let's not lose momentum on LinkedIn.
Anybody, anything else? We've got some discussions by the village board that we're waiting on. And I think we're doing what we can in the meantime to keep things moving along. But anybody add to the mix? Any new business? All right. If we're done, we're done. Motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn. I'll move to
Second.
adjourn.
Thank you, Mike. Second.
Okay.
It's a tie between me and Pam, but nevertheless, any opposed to adjourning at this point? Hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned. Go out and enjoy the almost spring day. All good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Nina,
everyone. Have
thank
a
you for
great
your
day.
insight.